What is this filthy thing doing in our neighborhood? Get out!
A boot kicked Miles's back, rough hands rummaging through his jacket. The sergeant pulled out Miles's wallet, opened it, counted the money.
$1,200 cash?
He sneered.
Where'd you steal this? That's my money.
He laughed.
You? Your kind only makes my streets dirty.
Pocketed the wallet. Eyes found Miles's wrist.
An Omega 2?
Yanked it off. The clasp broke.
Please, that's my father's.
Shut up! You and your father are both thieves!
His partner turned off their body cam. They took his AirPods, his glasses, everything.
We'll confiscate everything. Go home, useless trash. Report this and I'll bury you for 15 years.
Miles buried his face in the cold ground. None of them knew what was coming. But in 72 hours, they all would. The patrol car rolled through Whitfield Heights at 9:14 on a Tuesday evening. Sergeant Drake Collins sat behind the wheel, one hand on the steering wheel, the other wrapped around a gas station coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. Officer Pete Lawson rode shotgun, scrolling through his phone, barely paying attention to the streets outside. Collins had been on the force for 14 years. He knew every block, every alley, every shortcut through this neighborhood. Whitfield Heights was his territory. Clean lawns, quiet sidewalks, families who waved at the cruiser and slept with their doors unlocked. The kind of neighborhood that stayed nice because people like Collins kept it that way. At least, that was how he saw it. "Heads up," Collins said. Lawson looked up from his phone. Through the windshield, a figure moved along the sidewalk at a steady pace. Black hoodie pulled up over his head, running shoes hitting the pavement in rhythm. A small backpack bounced against his shoulders. Black male, hoodie. Running through Whitfield Heights at 9 o'clock at night. Collins set his coffee in the cup holder. That doesn't belong here. Lawson shifted in his seat. Could just be a jogger. A jogger doesn't wear a hoodie with the hood up in 70-degree weather. Not in this neighborhood. Collins reached for the radio, then stopped. He didn't call it in. No dispatch record. No log. He just flipped on the lights. The man stopped, turned around, hands already up before anyone told him to raise them. That detail would matter later, but not to Collins. Not tonight. Collins stepped out of the cruiser first. He didn't walk. He strutted. Thumbs hooked in his duty belt, chin tilted up. The kind of posture a man adopts when he believes his badge makes him untouchable. Lawson followed, 2 steps behind, hand resting on his holster, out of habit more than necessity. "What are you doing out here?" Collins asked. But the way he said it wasn't a question. It was an accusation. "I live 3 blocks from here. I'm just on my evening run." Collins looked him up and down. Hoodie, dark skin, running at night. In Collins' mind, the verdict was already in. "You got ID on you?" "I'm jogging. I don't carry ID when I run." "No ID." Collins smiled, the kind of smile that has nothing to do with happiness. "Then we've got a problem. On your knees." What happened next took less than 4 minutes. But those 4 minutes would eventually cost Collins everything he had. His badge, his pension, his freedom, and every shred of the reputation he had spent 14 years polishing. Collins kicked him in the back. The man's knees hit the pavement. Before he could speak, rough hands were already pulling at his jacket, turning pockets inside out, patting down every inch of fabric with the kind of thoroughness usually reserved for convicted felons, not joggers. Lawson stood 3 feet away, arms crossed, watching. He said nothing. He did nothing. That silence would later become its own form of guilt. Collins found the wallet first, pulled it out, flipped it open. His eyes widened just for a second, but long enough for the shift to register. $1,200 in crisp bills, a platinum credit card, a membership card for a downtown athletic club where monthly dues exceeded what Lawson made in a week. $1,200 cash. Collins held the wallet up, tilting it so Lawson could see. Where did you steal this? That's my money. I earned it. Collins didn't respond to the answer. He responded to the audacity of someone he had already decided was worthless, daring to claim ownership of anything. He shoved the wallet into his own jacket pocket, not into an evidence bag, not into a logged container, into his personal pocket, like a man pocketing change he found on the sidewalk. Then his eyes dropped to the man's wrist. The Omega Seamaster caught the streetlight, steel case, sapphire crystal, the kind of watch that costs more than a used car. Engraved on the back, though, Collins would never bother to look. Time reveals all. An Omega on you. Collins grabbed the wrist, twisted it, yanked the watch free. The clasp snapped, a small, sharp sound that carried further than it should have in the quiet street. This is stolen property. Please, that was my father's. He left it to me before he— Shut up. You and your father are both thieves to have gotten this. Collins turned to Lawson and nodded once. Lawson understood. He reached up to his chest and pressed the button on his body camera. The small red light blinked twice and went dark. No footage from this point forward. That was the agreement, unspoken, practiced, perfected over dozens of similar stops on dozens of similar nights. Collins held up the prescription sunglasses, turning them over in the streetlight. Designer frames, too. You people really do steal everything that isn't nailed down, don't you? He tossed them to Lawson, who caught them without a word and slipped them into his own pocket. That was how it worked between them. Collins took first pick, Lawson got the rest. An arrangement as old as their partnership. They took the AirPods from the backpack, the leather keychain, everything that had any value at all. Collins didn't sort through it carefully. He grabbed and pocketed with the casual efficiency of a man who had done this before, because he had. We'll confiscate everything, Collins said, as if the word confiscate could transform robbery into procedure, as if vocabulary could make crime legal. Go home, useless piece of trash. Report this, and I'll bury you in jail for 15 years. I know people. I know judges. He leaned close enough that the man could smell the stale coffee on his breath. Nobody believes a black guy in a hoodie. Nobody ever has. Nobody ever will. The man stayed on the ground, silent, still. Collins took that silence as submission. He would later learn it was something else entirely. Back at the precinct, Collins filled out a contact report. 3 paragraphs of fiction. Suspicious individual matching description of reported burglary suspect. Subject was non-compliant and verbally aggressive. No items of evidentiary value recovered. Subject released with verbal warning. Every sentence was a lie. Every word was calculated. He told the story in the break room like a punchline. Lawson sat in the corner laughing when Collins laughed, nodding when Collins nodded, performing the role of loyal understudy with the precision of a man whose promotion depended on it. You should have seen his face, Collins said, grinning. Begging for his daddy's watch. Pathetic. The room laughed, all except one. Sergeant Bill Whitmore, 26 years on the force, sat by the coffee machine and said nothing for a long time. When the laughter died down, he looked at Collins and spoke quietly. "You better hope that guy was nobody Drake." Collins waved him off. "He was nobody, trust me." Another officer, younger, newer, raised his hand like a kid in a classroom. "What if he actually files something?" Collins didn't even look at him. "Filed against me. 6 times in 14 years. 6 complaints. 6 internal reviews. 6 times cleared. The system works for us." He winked. The room went quiet for a moment, then someone changed the subject. Whitmore shook his head, stood up, and walked out. Collins finished his coffee, drove home, and slept like a man with nothing on his conscience. The Omega sat on his nightstand, still ticking. The engraving faced the ceiling. Time reveals all. He never read it. He never would. Miles Anderson walked through his front door at 9:31 that evening. He didn't slam it. He closed it softly, the way a man does when he's holding something inside that could break everything around him if he let it out. Grace was in the kitchen grading papers. She looked up when he came in, and the red pen stopped moving. His jacket was torn at the shoulder. His knees were dirty. A thin scrape ran along his left cheekbone where the pavement had caught skin. What happened? Miles set his backpack on the counter, unzipped it slowly, looked inside at the empty spaces where his AirPods used to be, where his sunglasses used to sit, where his wallet used to rest against the lining. He zipped it back up. 2 officers stopped me on Whitfield, said I matched a suspect description. Grace stood up. Did they? They took my wallet, $1,200, my cards, Dad's watch. He paused. My glasses, the AirPods, everything. Grace's hand went to her mouth, not because of the money, not because of the watch, because she had seen this before. She had seen it when Miles was 22 and got pulled over for driving a car that looked too nice for someone like him. She had seen it when he was 17, walking home from a library with a backpack full of law textbooks, stopped and patted down because a backpack in that neighborhood meant drugs. She had seen this story play out in the same country, on the same streets, with the same ending, for as long as she could remember. Are you hurt? Ribs, Miles said. He lifted his shirt. A purple bruise was already spreading across his left side, shaped like the edge of a kneecap. Grace pressed 2 fingers against it gently. He winced, but didn't pull away. We need to go to the hospital. We need to go to the hospital for documentation, not treatment. Miles looked at her. I need this on a medical record. Date, time, description of injury consistent with blunt force trauma. That was the moment Grace understood. Her husband wasn't a victim processing his pain. He was a judge building a case. Miles sat at the kitchen table with a glass of water he never drank. He pulled out a yellow legal pad, the same kind he used for case notes at the courthouse, and began writing. Not in anger, not in haste. In the precise, measured handwriting of a man who had spent his entire career turning chaos into evidence. 9:14 p.m. Patrol vehicle, activated lights. No siren, no dispatch call audible. 9:15 p.m. Sergeant ordered me to kneel, used racial slur, kicked my back before I could comply. 9:16 p.m. Pat-down began. Wallet discovered. Sergeant commented on cash amount. Implied theft or drug dealing. 9:17 p.m. Omega Seamaster removed from wrist by force. Clasp broken. Sergeant stated stolen property without basis. 9:18 p.m. Second officer deactivated body camera. Backpack searched. AirPods, prescription sunglasses, leather keychain confiscated. 9:19 p.m. Sergeant demanded signature on document described as voluntary surrender. I refused. Struck in ribs. Threatened with false drug charges. 9:20 p.m. Both officers departed on foot to patrol vehicle, laughing. 6 minutes. He had reconstructed the entire event in 6 minutes, with timestamps accurate to 60 seconds. Because Miles Anderson didn't just experience what happened to him, he observed it. The way a judge observes testimony from the bench, noting inconsistencies, cataloging details, filing away every word and gesture for later use. Grace watched him write. She had seen him prepare for complex federal cases with less intensity than this. "Miles, what are you going to do?" He didn't answer immediately. He reached into the inside pocket of his torn jacket, the one pocket they hadn't searched, and set a small black device on the table. It was the size of a thumb drive. A tiny red light pulsed on its side. Grace stared at it. "Is that—" Personal dash cam. Clips to the inside lining. Records audio and video to a micro SD card. Miles pressed the button on its side. The red light stopped. "I've worn it every time I run for the past 3 years." Grace sat down. "Since when?" "Since Dad." The room went quiet. There are some words that carry the weight of an entire history, and that word, Dad, was one of them. Raymond Anderson, Miles' father, a postal worker for 31 years on Chicago's South Side, never missed a day, never raised his voice. In the summer of 2009, Raymond was walking home from the post office in his uniform, his blue USPS shirt still tucked in, his name badge still clipped to his chest, when 2 plainclothes officers tackled him to the ground. They said he matched the description of a robbery suspect. He didn't. The suspect was 5 inches taller and 20 years younger. But Raymond was black, and that was enough. They broke his collarbone, fractured 2 ribs, left him on the sidewalk. No arrest, no charges, no apology. The complaint he filed was marked unfounded within 48 hours. The officers received no discipline. Raymond's collarbone healed crooked. He carried the ache in his shoulder for the rest of his life, along with something heavier, the knowledge that the system he had trusted, the country he had served, did not consider him worth protecting. Miles was 11 years old. He watched his father wince every time he reached for something on a high shelf. He watched him stop walking for exercise. A man who had walked 5 miles a day for 30 years, suddenly afraid of his own streets. He watched the strongest man he knew become smaller. That was the year Miles decided to become a lawyer. Not to prosecute, not to defend, to judge. Because prosecutors and defenders argued about what the law meant, judges decided what the law was. Yale Law School, top 5%. Federal clerkship at the 7th Circuit. 2 published opinions on civil rights law cited in textbooks before he turned 30. 3 months ago, appointed to the federal district bench. The youngest black federal judge in state history. No press conference. No profile. Just a small headshot on the courthouse website. His name meant nothing to a sergeant who spent his evenings shaking down joggers. Miles picked up the dash cam and turned it over in his hand. The device weighed less than 2 ounces. The footage on it weighed considerably more. "I'm filing a complaint with Internal Affairs in the morning," he said. "Formal, on the record, with a copy of this footage." Grace looked at him. "And if the case goes to trial? If it lands on your desk?" Miles set the device down, straightened his legal pad, clicked his pen closed. "Then I'll do what I always do. I'll follow the law. And the law doesn't care what I was wearing." Miles didn't sleep that night. Not because of the pain in his ribs, though every breath reminded him it was there. He didn't sleep because his mind was already working, sorting, organizing, building. At 5 in the morning, he sat in his home office, a small room at the back of the apartment that Grace called the vault. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined every wall. Hundreds of legal volumes, many marked with colored tabs, dog-eared at pages he had read so many times the paper had gone soft. His desk was plain, a wooden surface his grandfather had built from reclaimed oak. No decorations, except 2 things: a framed photograph of Raymond in his postal uniform, standing in front of their house on the south side, smiling, the kind of smile a man gives when he believes tomorrow will be better than today. And next to it, an empty watch box, black leather, velvet interior. The outline of the Omega still pressed into the cushion. Miles opened his laptop and inserted the micro SD card from the dash cam. The footage loaded in seconds. He watched it once, all the way through, without pausing. His own face pressed against the pavement. Collins's boot. The wallet being opened. The watch being ripped from his wrist. Lawson's hand reaching for the body cam. The red light going dark. He watched it a second time. This time, he paused at 17 points. Each pause became a screenshot. Each screenshot became a timestamp. Each timestamp became a line in a document he titled Incident Report, Personal Record, Confidential. At 7:15, he called Tyler Brooks. Tyler was a civil rights attorney with a practice downtown. They had met at Yale, second-year constitutional law seminar, argued opposite sides of a Fourth Amendment case so viciously that the professor had to call a recess. They had been friends ever since. "I need your advice," Miles said, off the record. "It's 7 in the morning, Miles." "2 officers stopped me last night in Whitfield Heights. Robbed me. Took my wallet, Dad's watch, everything in my bag. Beat me when I refused to sign a voluntary surrender form. Threatened to plant drugs if I reported it." Silence on the other end. Then, "Tell me you got it on camera." "Every second." Tyler exhaled. "Okay. Walk me through the chain of custody. Where's the SD card right now?" "In my laptop. I've made 2 encrypted copies, one on a flash drive in my desk, one uploaded to a cloud server with time-stamped metadata." "You filed with IA yet?" "Doing it this morning, in person. I want the intake officer's name badge number and a receipt with a case number before I leave the building." Tyler paused. "Miles, you know what happens if this goes to trial." "I know." "If the case gets assigned to your bench, and in this district there's a real chance it does, they'll file for recusal before you can finish reading the docket." "I've already thought about that." "And?" "I'll disclose the conflict to Chief Judge Hargrove before the case is filed. Full transparency. If she decides I can preside, I preside. If she doesn't, I step aside. Either way, the footage speaks for itself. Tyler was quiet for a moment. You're not angry. Miles looked at the photograph of his father. Raymond's smile, the crinkle around his eyes. The uniform, pressed sharp enough to cut glass. A man who did everything right and still got broken on a sidewalk by people who were supposed to protect him. I'm furious, Miles said. But fury doesn't win cases. Evidence does. After the call, Miles assembled everything into a single file. The dashcam footage, the screenshots, his typed timeline, the ER report, contusion consistent with blunt force trauma, probable rib fracture, photographs of his torn jacket and the empty watch box. He labeled the file with a case number he made up himself, not an official one, just a habit from years on the bench. A way of telling himself that this wasn't personal anymore. This was a proceeding. He printed one copy, placed it in a manila envelope, wrote on the front in black marker, I, a formal complaint, Sergeant Drake Collins, badge number 4412/ Officer Pete Lawson, badge number 6108. Then he put on his suit, knotted his tie, and drove to the Internal Affairs Division. He arrived at 8:45, 15 minutes before the office opened. He waited in the parking lot, engine off, envelope on the passenger seat. A man who waits 15 minutes in a parking lot before filing a complaint is not acting on impulse. He is acting on principle. And principle, unlike anger, does not fade. The Internal Affairs intake officer was a woman named Lieutenant Sandra Voss. She had processed over 400 complaints in her career. Most of them went nowhere. Officers accused of excessive force, racial profiling, unlawful searches. The paperwork came in, the investigation dragged on, and the findings almost always landed in the same place: unfounded, unsubstantiated, exonerated. 3 words that meant the same thing in practice. Nothing happened. When Miles Anderson walked into her office at 9:01 that Tuesday morning, she expected more of the same. A man with a grievance may be legitimate, maybe not, but either way, destined for the same filing cabinet as every complaint before it. Then he set the manila envelope on her desk, and for the next 45 minutes, Sandra Voss listened to a man describe the most methodically documented case of police robbery she had ever encountered. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't cry. He didn't pound the table. He laid out the evidence the way a surgeon lays out instruments, each piece in its place, each one sterile, each one ready to cut. The dashcam footage, 17 time-stamped screenshots, a typed minute-by-minute reconstruction, an ER report with imaging results, photographs of his injuries, his torn jacket, the empty watch box. And one detail that made Voss sit up straighter in her chair: the names and badge numbers of both officers written in neat handwriting on the front of the envelope, before he had walked through the door. "You came prepared," Voss said. "I come prepared for everything, Lieutenant." She assigned the case a number. She gave Miles a receipt. And she did something she rarely did. She flagged the file for priority review. Within 48 hours, IA had pulled the body camera logs for Collins and Lawson. The footage from that Tuesday night showed 7 minutes and 12 seconds of black screen. The camera had been manually deactivated at 9:17 p.m. and reactivated at 9:24 p.m. The gap corresponded exactly to the second with Miles' dashcam timeline. But the gap wasn't empty. The department's digital forensics unit discovered that the footage hadn't been erased cleanly. Lawson had pressed the off button on the camera, but the device had a 4-second buffer, a manufacturer feature designed to prevent accidental data loss. Those 4 seconds captured audio before the screen went dark. Collins' voice, clear as a church bell in an empty room. "We'll confiscate everything." Lawson's voice, quieter, nervous. "What if he talks?" Collins again. "Who's gonna believe him? Look at him." 4 seconds. 12 words from Collins. 5 from Lawson. Enough to turn an allegation into a case. The forensics team went deeper. They pulled the full camera history for both officers over the previous 18 months. What they found was not an anomaly. It was a pattern. Collins' body camera had experienced technical malfunctions on 14 separate occasions. Each malfunction lasted between 5 and 9 minutes. Each one occurred during a pedestrian stop. And each stop involved a black male between the ages of 18 and 45 in the same 6-block radius of Whitfield Heights. Lawson's camera showed identical gaps on 11 of those 14 stops. Same dates, same times, same duration. 2 cameras malfunctioning simultaneously on the same nights during the same encounters. The statistical probability of that being coincidental was, according to the forensics report, functionally 0. IA pulled the complaint files. 11 prior complaints had been filed against Collins over the past 3 years. All from black men. All from Whitfield Heights. All describing the same sequence. Stopped without cause, searched personal items, confiscated, threatened with arrest if they reported it. Complaint number 1, Terrence Watts, 22. Stopped while walking home from a convenience store. Wallet taken, $73. Filed complaint. Outcome unfounded. Complaint number 3, Andre Palmer, 31. Stopped while sitting in his own car outside his own apartment. Watch and phone taken. Filed complaint. Outcome unsubstantiated. Complaint number 7, Devin Sharp, 19. Stopped while waiting for a bus. Backpack searched. Headphones, cash, and a birthday gift for his mother, a silver bracelet. Confiscated. Filed complaint. Outcome exonerated. 11 men, 11 stops, 11 complaints. 11 times the system reviewed itself and found nothing wrong. The total estimated value of confiscated property across all 11 incidents? Over $32,000. Not one item was ever logged as evidence. Not one item was ever returned. Lieutenant Voss sat in her office and read through the files, in order, 1 through 11. By the time she reached number 8, her coffee had gone cold. By number 11, she had stopped drinking it altogether. She picked up her phone and called the district attorney's office. Assistant District Attorney Vivian Shaw answered on the second ring. Shaw was 44, a former public defender who had crossed to the prosecution side 6 years ago because, as she told anyone who asked, "I got tired of watching guilty people walk. I wanted to be the one who stopped them." She had prosecuted 3 police misconduct cases in her career, won all 3. Voss gave her the summary. When she finished, Shaw was quiet for 10 seconds. In a courtroom, 10 seconds of silence is an eternity. On the phone, it meant Shaw was already building the case in her head. The dashcam footage, chain of custody is clean, airtight. Time-stamped metadata, encrypted backup, original SD card preserved. The body cam buffer audio admissible. Manufacturer confirms the 4-second buffer is standard, no warrant needed. It's department property, recording on department equipment during official duty. And the 11 prior complaints? All documented, all black males, all same neighborhood, all same M.O. None sustained. Shaw exhaled. That's not a misconduct case, Lieutenant. That's a criminal enterprise. File it as robbery under color of authority. Civil rights violations under Section 242. Evidence tampering for the camera deletions. I want a grand jury within 2 weeks. The grand jury convened 13 days later. They heard testimony from 3 of the 11 prior victims, Terrence Watts, Andre Palmer, and Devin Sharp. Each man told the same story with different details, but identical bones stopped for nothing. Robbed of everything, told no one would believe them. The jury deliberated for less than 90 minutes. Indictment. Sergeant Drake Collins. 4 counts of robbery under color of authority. 3 counts of civil rights violations under 18 U.S.C. Section 242. 2 counts of evidence tampering. 1 count of witness intimidation. Indictment. Officer Pete Lawson. 2 counts of robbery under color of authority. 2 counts of accessory to civil rights violations. 1 count of evidence tampering. Collins was arrested at his home on a Thursday morning. He was eating breakfast: scrambled eggs, white toast, black coffee. The same routine he'd followed for 14 years. When the IA officers knocked, he opened the door with the fork still in his hand. They found the Omega Seamaster in his bedroom nightstand drawer, the engraving on the back still legible. Time reveals all. They found Miles' prescription sunglasses in Lawson's glove compartment, the AirPods in Collins' gym bag, the leather keychain in a kitchen junk drawer, tossed in between old batteries and takeout menus, the kind of place you put something you stole but never valued. Both men were booked, fingerprinted, and released on bond. Their trial date was set for 3 weeks out. Federal courtroom, judge to be assigned. Collins' attorney told him not to worry. "These things get plea dealed down," he said. "Worst case, you lose the badge and do 18 months in a minimum security facility. You'll be out before your kid finishes middle school." Collins believed him. He had spent 14 years watching the system protect its own. He had no reason to think this time would be different. He was wrong. And he would find out exactly how wrong in 21 days when he walked into courtroom 4B of the federal courthouse and looked up at the bench. But that part comes next. Courtroom 4B, 30-foot ceilings, dark oak. The bench elevated at the front. Whoever sat there would always be looking down. On the morning of the trial, Drake Collins walked in like a man attending a formality. Navy suit, red tie, hair slicked back. His attorney, Gerald Pratt, carried a leather briefcase and the confidence of a man who had never lost a plea negotiation. Lawson followed. Gray suit, eyes hollow. He hadn't slept in weeks. The gallery was half full. A few reporters, 3 of the 11 prior victims, Terrence Watts, Andre Palmer, Devin Sharp, seated together in the second row, close enough to the defense table that Collins could feel their eyes on the back of his neck. He didn't turn around. He never acknowledged them. In his mind, they were still nobody. ADA Vivian Shaw sat at the prosecution table, arranging folders with the calm efficiency of a woman who had already won this case in her head. She didn't look at Collins. She didn't need to. Everything she needed was in those folders. Collins leaned toward Pratt. "Who's the judge?" Pratt opened his file. "Anderson, Federal District, appointed 3 months ago. Not much of a record yet. Should work in our favor. New judges tend to play it safe." Collins nodded. "Good." At exactly 9 o'clock, the bailiff stood. "All rise. The United States District Court for the Northern District is now in session. The Honorable Judge Miles Anderson presiding." The door behind the bench opened. Miles Anderson stepped out in a black robe. He moved with the unhurried precision of a man who had rehearsed nothing, but prepared for everything. He crossed to the bench, adjusted his chair, opened a leather-bound folder, and looked up at the courtroom. His eyes swept the gallery, the prosecution table, the defense table, and then they stopped. Collins saw the face first, the jawline, the cheekbone. Something familiar, something his brain was trying to place, but couldn't, because the last time he had seen this face, it was pressed against wet asphalt under a streetlight in Whitfield Heights. Then it clicked. The blood drained from Collins' face in real time. It started at his forehead, a visible paling that moved downward like a curtain being drawn. His mouth opened. No sound came out. His fingers gripped the edge of the defense table so hard that his knuckles went white. Lawson recognized him half a second later. His reaction was different, quieter, more internal, more devastating. He didn't grip the table. He closed his eyes. And when he opened them, they were wet. The man in the hoodie, the man they kicked to the ground, the man whose father's watch Collins had ripped from his wrist and tossed into a nightstand drawer like a souvenir. That man was now sitting 6 feet above them, wearing a black robe, holding their futures in his hands. Pratt noticed his client's face. "Drake, what's wrong?" Collins couldn't speak. He just stared at the bench. Pratt looked up, looked at the judge, looked back at Collins, and then, slowly, horribly, he understood. He was on his feet in 3 seconds. "Your Honor, I move for immediate recusal. The defendant has reason to believe the presiding judge has a personal conflict of interest in this matter." Miles didn't flinch. He didn't pause. He had been waiting for this motion, the way a chess player waits for an opponent's predictable opening. "Counselor, I anticipated this motion. Let me save the court some time." He opened the leather folder. 6 days ago, I filed a full disclosure with Chief Judge Eleanor Hargrove, detailing my involvement as the complainant in the incident that initiated this case. Chief Judge Hargrove reviewed the matter and determined that recusal is not warranted for 3 reasons. 1. The charges are supported entirely by independent evidence. My testimony is neither required nor entered. 2. My judicial record shows 0 reversals in law enforcement cases. 3. Allowing defendants to select their judge by victimizing them sets a precedent this court refuses to establish. He closed the folder, looked directly at Collins for the first time. "This trial will proceed, and I want to assure you, Sergeant Collins, you will receive from this bench a level of fairness that far exceeds what you showed me on that sidewalk." The courtroom went silent. Not the polite silence of decorum. The airless silence of 40 people holding their breath at the same time. Collins sat down. His attorney sat down. Neither spoke. In the second row, Terrence Watts leaned toward Andre Palmer and whispered 4 words. "That's the guy. That's him." Palmer nodded. For the first time in 3 years, he smiled. ADA Vivian Shaw stood up slowly. She didn't rush. Prosecutors who rush look nervous. Prosecutors who take their time look certain. Shaw looked certain. The people call Eleanor Whitfield. Eleanor Whitfield was 68 years old. She lived on the 3rd floor of a brownstone on Maple Street in Whitfield Heights, directly across from the spot where Miles Anderson had been thrown to the ground. On the night in question, she heard shouting from her window, looked down, saw everything, and did what she always did, picked up her phone and pressed record. Mrs. Whitfield Shaw said, "Can you describe what you saw from your window on the evening of September 14th? Eleanor's voice was steady, the kind of steady that comes from 70 years of refusing to be ignored. "I saw 2 police officers rob a man. That's what I saw. One of them took his wallet and put it in his own coat. Then he took the man's watch right off his wrist. The other one turned off his camera. Then they went through his bag and took everything else." "Did the man resist?" "He didn't move. He didn't raise his voice. He said, 'Please,' twice. That's all." Shaw let the answer sit. Then she pressed play. The courtroom screen lit up with Eleanor's phone footage. 47 seconds. Grainy, but clear enough. Collins' hand reaching into Miles' jacket, the wallet being pulled out. Collins holding it up to the streetlight, counting the bills. The Omega being yanked from the wrist. Lawson reaching for his body cam, the red light going dark. 47 seconds of footage that no objection could undo. Shaw didn't pause for effect. She didn't need to. She moved directly to the body camera evidence. The people now present Exhibit D, recovered body camera audio from Officer Lawson's device. The courtroom speakers crackled. Then Collins' voice filled the room, captured in the 4-second buffer before the camera went fully dark. "We'll confiscate everything." Lawson's voice barely above a whisper. "What if he talks?" Collins, again, casual, almost bored. "Who's going to believe him? Look at him." In the gallery, Devin Sharp, 19 years old, complaint number 7. The kid whose birthday bracelet for his mother was taken and never returned, lowered his head. His shoulders shook once. Just once. The woman next to him put her hand on his back. Shaw turned to Collins. "Sergeant Collins, you testified in your deposition that the stop on September 14th was conducted in accordance with standard procedure. Is that correct?" Collins shifted in his chair. "Yes." "Standard procedure includes activating and maintaining body camera footage for the duration of any civilian encounter. Correct?" "Yes, but there was a malfunction." "A malfunction?" Shaw opened a folder. "Your body camera experienced malfunctions on 14 separate occasions over 18 months, all during pedestrian stops, all involving black males, all in the same 6-block radius." She laid 14 incident reports on the table, one at a time, like dealing cards. "Would you describe that as a coincidence, Sergeant?" Collins' attorney objected. Miles sustained the objection on a technicality. The question was argumentative. Shaw rephrased without missing a beat. Sergeant Collins, can you provide a technical explanation for why your body camera malfunctioned 14 times exclusively during stops involving black male subjects? Collins opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I don't. The equipment is old. It happens. To both cameras, on the same nights, for the same duration. Silence. Shaw picked up the final folder. The people enter Exhibit F. 11 prior complaints filed against Sergeant Collins spanning 3 years. All from black men. All from Whitfield Heights. All describing the same pattern. Stopped without cause, searched personal items, confiscated, threatened with arrest. She read 11 names, one by one. Each one a stone dropped into still water. 11 men, Sergeant. 11 stops. 11 complaints. 11 times reviewed internally. 11 times cleared. Shaw closed the folder. And now a 12th. Except this time, the 12th man had a camera too. Collins stared at the table. His attorney stared at his notes. Neither had anything left to say. Miles sat on the bench, pen in hand, writing notes. His face showed nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, no vindication. Just a calm, steady focus of a man doing his job. The evidence didn't need emotion. It spoke for itself. And it spoke loudly enough to be heard in every corner of that courtroom. ADA Vivian Shaw rose for her closing argument the way a surgeon picks up a scalpel. No hesitation, no wasted movement. Every cut already planned. Ladies and gentlemen, this case is not complicated. 2 officers swore an oath to protect the public. Instead, they robbed the public. They didn't do it once. They did it at least 12 times that we know of. They targeted black men. They targeted the same neighborhood. They used the same method: stop, search, steal, threaten, erase. And for 3 years, the system they worked inside protected them. She paused, let the silence carry the weight. The defense will tell you these were isolated incidents, mistakes, lapses in judgment. But mistakes don't follow a pattern. Lapses don't come with a system for deleting evidence. What Sergeant Collins and Officer Lawson operated was not police work. It was a criminal enterprise wearing a badge. She turned to the evidence table. You've seen the dashcam footage, the cell phone video, the recovered body camera audio. You've heard from 3 of the 11 prior victims. These items were found in their homes, not in an evidence locker, in a nightstand drawer, in a glove compartment, in a gym bag. That is not confiscation. That is theft. And when theft is committed by men carrying guns and badges who threaten their victims with prison, it becomes robbery under color of authority. It becomes a civil rights violation. It becomes a betrayal of every officer who puts on a uniform and actually means the oath. Shaw sat down. She didn't say thank you. She didn't need to. Gerald Pratt stood for the defense. He was a good lawyer, smart enough to know when a case was lost, and professional enough to argue it anyway. My client served 14 years on this force. 14 years of early mornings, late nights, holidays, missed birthdays spent in a patrol car. He is not a perfect man. No officer is. But a career should not be defined by its worst moments. He spoke for 11 minutes. Words like dedication and service and the pressures of modern policing. It was competent. It changed nothing. The jury deliberated for 4 hours and 22 minutes. When they returned, the foreman, a retired schoolteacher named Patricia Hollins, stood with a single sheet of paper in her hand. Robbery under color of authority, guilty on all 4 counts. Collins didn't move. Civil rights violations under 18 U.S.C. Section 242, guilty on all 3 counts. Evidence tampering, guilty on both counts. Witness intimidation, guilty. 10 charges, 10 guilty verdicts. Collins stared at the table as if the wood grain might open up and swallow him whole. Lawson's verdict followed. Guilty on 5 of 6 charges. His cooperation with the investigation had earned him nothing from the jury, only from the sentencing guidelines. Miles set down his pen. He had written through every verdict without pausing. Now he looked up. The court thanks the jury for their service. Sentencing will be rendered at this time. He opened a folder. The courtroom held its breath. Sergeant Drake Collins, you carried a badge for 14 years. That badge was a promise to protect, to serve, to uphold the law equally for every citizen, regardless of the color of their skin. You broke that promise, not once, not by accident, but systematically, deliberately, and repeatedly targeting the most vulnerable people in your jurisdiction because you believed they had no voice and no recourse. Miles paused. His voice remained level. You were wrong. They had a voice. 11 of them. And today, this court has heard every single one. This court sentences you to 15 years in federal prison, no possibility of parole for a minimum of 12 years. Your badge, your pension, and your right to serve in any law enforcement capacity are permanently revoked. Collins' head dropped. His attorney stared straight ahead. In the gallery, Terrence Watts exhaled a breath he had been holding, it seemed, for 3 years. Officer Pete Lawson, your culpability is lesser in degree, but not in kind. You stood by. You turned off cameras. You took your share. Silence in the face of injustice is not neutrality. It is participation. This court sentences you to 4 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation. Lawson nodded. He didn't look up. He didn't look at Collins. He looked at his own hands, as if seeing them clearly for the first time. Miles closed the folder. He didn't smile. He didn't exhale. He simply said, "Court is adjourned." The gavel came down once. A single, clean sound that echoed off the 30-foot ceiling and settled into every corner of courtroom 4B like the last note of a hymn. In the second row, Devin Sharp, the kid whose birthday bracelet was never returned, stood up. He didn't clap. He didn't cheer. He just stood, hands at his sides, chin lifted, looking at the bench. Andre Palmer stood next to him. Then Terrence Watts. 3 men standing in silence. Not for the verdict, for the fact that someone had finally listened. Drake Collins was transferred to a federal correctional facility 11 days after sentencing. He entered in handcuffs, wearing the same Navy suit he had worn to trial. No badge, no gun, no authority. Just a man in a suit, walking through a door he couldn't walk back out of for at least 12 years. His pension was revoked. His name was entered into the National Decertification Index, a permanent record that would follow him for the rest of his life, ensuring he could never wear a badge again in any state, in any capacity, for any reason. Pete Lawson reported to a minimum security facility 2 weeks later. He served his time quietly. He never spoke to Collins again. The 11 prior complaints were reopened. All 11. Each one was reclassified from unfounded to sustained. The families of the victims were contacted. Restitution hearings were scheduled. Terrence Watts got his $73 back. Devin Sharp's mother received a new silver bracelet, not the one that was taken, because that one was never found, but one purchased by the department as part of a settlement that acknowledged what should have been acknowledged 3 years earlier, that her son had told the truth and no one had listened. The Whitfield Heights Police Department implemented mandatory reforms. Body cameras could no longer be manually deactivated during civilian encounters. An independent oversight board, civilians, not officers, was established to review all complaints involving racial profiling or use of force. Every patrol unit in the district was required to complete quarterly bias training, taught not by officers, but by community members who had experienced the consequences of bias firsthand. Miles Anderson returned to his bench the morning after the verdict. Same routine. Up at 5, 5-mile run, case files before coffee. He didn't give interviews. He didn't write op-eds. He didn't post on social media. When a reporter from the city paper called his office and asked how it felt to sentence the men who had robbed him, his clerk relayed a 2-sentence response. Judge Anderson does not comment on cases he has presided over. The record speaks for itself. The Omega Seamaster was returned to him in a clear evidence bag. He opened it at his kitchen table. Grace sat across from him. He turned the watch over and read the engraving one more time. Time reveals all. He put it on. The clasp had been repaired. It clicked into place, a small, clean sound, like the closing of something that had been open for too long. He still runs every evening. Same route, same neighborhood, same hoodie. The only difference is that now, when the patrol cars pass, they slow down, not to stop him, but to wave. If this story moved you, drop a comment. Have you ever been judged by how you looked instead of who you are? Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already, subscribe and hit that notification bell. Because stories like this aren't over. They're just getting started. Hashtag Justice for Miles. Hashtag Dirty Cops. Hashtag Judge in a Hoodie. Hashtag Time reveals all. Time reveals everything. Abuse your power today and tomorrow. The person you stepped on might be sitting above you. Fury fades. Evidence doesn't. Stay patient. Stay ready. Always. Time reveals everything. Abuse your power today and tomorrow. The person you stepped on might be sitting above you. Fury fades. Evidence doesn't. Stay patient. Stay ready. Always.